The manner of death was listed as a suicide. The medical examiner reviewing the case file disagreed, citing inconsistencies in the pattern and distribution of bullet residue on the deceased's hands and clothing. Upon closer examination, ballistic analysis confirmed that residue found on the victim matched exclusively to a single firearm recovered from the scene. This finding contradicted initial assumptions about the nature of the incident, prompting further investigation into potential circumstances surrounding the discharge of the weapon. The presence of unique striations on both the bullet and casing provided additional evidence corroborating the specific firearm's use in the fatal shooting. These forensic details suggested an alternative scenario involving another individual, necessitating a reevaluation of witness statements and surveillance footage to uncover the true events leading up to the deceased's demise. Chapter: Case Background. The incident under examination occurred on March 15th at a residential property located in downtown Seattle. At approximately 9:45 p.m., local law enforcement received a call from a neighbor who reported hearing multiple gunshots and observing an individual lying motionless outside the deceased's residence. Upon arrival, officers found the deceased sprawled near the front door with visible gunshot wounds. Initial responders assumed the scene was a result of a burglary gone awry due to signs of forced entry at the property's main entrance. However, no suspects were identified, and there were no witnesses willing to provide statements. The local medical examiner's office was contacted, and upon examination, it became evident that further forensic investigation would be necessary to determine the precise sequence of events leading up to the deceased's death. Chapter: Initial findings. Upon arrival at the scene, first responders noted a single individual positioned supine on the ground within a residential apartment. The deceased displayed no visible external signs of trauma or hemorrhage to suggest immediate cause of death based on initial visual assessment. Scene conditions indicated limited access points and restricted space, suggesting possible confinement during incident. Body position aligned with post-mortem skeletal relaxation patterns consistent with sudden onset of incapacitation. Initial medical examination by emergency services personnel confirmed absence of vital signs and no observable entry or exit wounds upon external inspection. This lack of apparent trauma prompted immediate suspicion of potential concealed injury or secondary cause, necessitating further forensic evaluation. Classification of manner of death was initially categorized as undetermined pending additional evidence collection and analysis. Discovery of a nearby firearm within close proximity to the deceased triggered subsequent examination for corroborative ballistic evidence, leading to recovery of trace residue indicative of recent discharge, consistent with weapon present at scene. This finding warranted comprehensive bullet residue analysis to confirm correlation between recovered samples and firearm in question. Chapter: Forensic Investigation. Upon arrival at the crime scene, investigators documented and secured the area to prevent contamination. Forensic technicians collected bullet fragments from a shattered window pane on the north side of the room, consistent with the trajectory analysis of entry wounds observed on the deceased. Swabs for gunshot residue were taken from the hands and clothing of the deceased, as well as from potential witnesses. A 9mm semi-automatic handgun was recovered under the debris near the exit door. The firearm exhibited a partial fingerprint impression, which was carefully lifted using lift tape. All evidence was placed in individual, tamper-evident bags with unique identifiers and logged into the property control system. Notable were the presence of multiple impact marks on interior walls and the absence of a spent cartridge casing at the scene, suggesting it may have been ejected during handling by an assailant. Bullet residue analysis was conducted on the deceased's hands and clothing to determine if there had been recent discharge of a firearm in proximity to them. Gunshot primer residues, including barium and antimony, were analyzed using energy-dispersive X-ray spectroscopy (EDS) and scanning electron microscopy (SEM). Detection thresholds for barium and antimony were set at 0, 1 micrograms per square centimeter, and 0. 2 micrograms per square centimeter respectively, with results indicating concentrations exceeding these limits on both hands and the fabric near them. Histological sections of tissue samples revealed particulate matter consistent with firearm discharge residue, confirmed through microscopic examination. Microscopic findings showed metallic particles embedded in keratinous layers of the skin, aligning with SEM/EDS analysis. These particles were found to match residues from a specific caliber of ammunition collected at the scene, providing definitive evidence of exposure to gunpowder and primer compounds characteristic of this firearm type. The analysis of bullet residue collected from the deceased's hands and clothing provided critical temporal context for the sequence of events leading to the fatal gunshot wound. Residue matching a specific firearm model was identified, confirming its use at the scene. The postmortem interval estimation was based on rigor mortis progression, livor mortis distribution, and body temperature measurements. These indicators suggested that death occurred approximately 3 hours prior to discovery, with a confidence level of plus or minus 1 hour. This timeline corroborated witness statements placing the deceased near the firearm's location at the approximate time of the incident. However, it contradicted alibi claims by several individuals who were present during the time frame in question, indicating potential inconsistencies in their accounts. The residue analysis and PMI determination collectively established a robust framework for understanding the chronology of events surrounding the fatal encounter. Analysis of bullet residue on the deceased's hands and clothing revealed consistent elemental composition with lead, barium, and antimony, indicative of gunpowder propellant from a discharged firearm. Microscopic examination and spectrographic analysis confirmed the presence of these elements at levels characteristic of contact with recently fired ammunition. Comparison of this residue to samples obtained from the suspected weapon yielded a match in terms of chemical signature and particle morphology, supporting the hypothesis that the firearm recovered was indeed the one used in the incident. This evidence is conclusive regarding the association between the deceased's exposure to gunshot discharge and the specific firearm involved. Under oath, an expert would assert the high probability of direct contact between the residue on the deceased and the gun barrel at the time of firing, based on the forensic findings. Chapter Resolution: The analysis of gunshot residue on the deceased's hands provided definitive evidence linking them to the firearm used in their demise. Through meticulous examination, particles consistent with primer residues were identified and matched to specific components present in the discharged cartridge case found at the scene. This correlation confirmed that the weapon discovered near the body was indeed the instrument responsible for the fatal shots. Initially, there were uncertainties regarding the precise nature of the residue and its relation to any particular firearm. However, advancements in analytical techniques allowed for a more granular assessment, revealing distinct markers indicative of specific ammunition types and their associated firearms. These findings conclusively tied the deceased's proximity to the weapon during discharge. The central finding that the gunshot residue matches the firearm was established through comparative analysis between samples collected from the hands of the deceased and those retrieved from the weapon in question. This evidence eliminated alternative scenarios involving secondary transfer or contamination, solidifying the conclusion that the deceased had direct contact with the firearm immediately prior to its use. Thus, this chapter marks a conclusive resolution to the forensic investigation, providing clear evidence supporting the case against the implicated firearm. Bullet residue analysis confirms a direct correlation between the firearm and the gunshot discharge, substantiating the presence of consistent chemical markers on the hands of the individual in question. This finding underscores the reliability of forensic methodologies in establishing weapon-to-indicator relationships within criminal investigations. The file remains open,